All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Jenna Wood, and I am one of the dietitians here with the Giant Company, so Giant and Martins. Today, if you're unfamiliar with our classes, we have our Feature Friday where we do just that. We are featuring a brand, a product that we like, our dietitian team likes, and we do it on Fridays. So that is our topic for today. And we are going to do our deep dive into the Organic Meat Company, whatever you want to say. And we'll make a recipe a little bit more involved than we normally do in a Feature Friday, but we have beef, so we want to make something nice. So let us get into our topic today. Okay, here we go. So for the Organic Meat Company, I'd love to hear, in the Q&A, if you have ever tried their beef before. I'll talk a little bit through, how they came to be here in the Giant Company. And then, of course, we'll talk through some of the products that we carry. Ooh, they're out of order. So for the company, so this is a fifth generation family business. They are owned underneath the Hewitt Company. But their company champions environmental stewardship and regenerative agriculture, which, if you've joined a lot of our classes, a lot of the products we talk about are not only better for you physically, but also are better for the environment because we want those foods and things to be able to feed us and sustain us for a long time. Ultimately, the Organic Meat Company difference comes down to the simple promise that nothing goes into their meat that doesn't belong there ever. So, knowing where your food comes from and what's in it matters, and they believe that. They are new to the Giant Company as of May, so still a fairly new product line that you'll start to see in our meat cases. And as far as I know, they are not found anywhere else, so you're pretty, exclusive here at the Giant Company. And they look, I love their unique color, which I think is kind of nice. It stands out quite nice in the meat case. So here, this is a really nice graphic from their website, but really they're showcasing it's what they don't do that sets them apart. So at the Organic Meat Company, they believe that better meat comes from those better practices. So they focus on organic farming that, respects the land, but also the animals. So we want to respect the animals that are providing us with product, like the beef that we'll show today. They go the extra mile to produce meat that is naturally free from, as you'll kind of see here in some of the graphics, synthetic additives, but also compromise, as they say. They only source meat from ranchers whose animals roam freely. So we'll talk a little bit about grass, fed, finished, all of that. Grazing on grasses across their vast rangeland. For us, the quote unquote good means nourishing you and your family with delicious and ethically produced meat. And you can feel good about what you eat, knowing that every choice that you're making, because truly every choice we make when it comes to food can contribute to sustainability. So their beef products are going to be USDA certified organic, grass fed and finished, which again, I'll talk about at the end. No antibiotics ever, which we've touched on in other brands and topics. So this means, if an animal for some reason did need antibiotics, they're not going to withhold that from the sick animal. They just will no longer be a part of this brand. They will be sold to be a part of a different brand. No added hormones ever. They're never confined to feedlots. There's no synthetic additives. And then it is nutrient dense, which we will touch on. So a little bit more about the company. So their beef again is certified organic, raised with care, as I mentioned on their graphic, no synthetic additives. And I think the real big piece, and this is something you'll notice just by looking at the beef, but also once you taste it, that, they really do care about the animal and that they're living in low stress environments. Stressed out animals make stressed out meat, so to speak, and not really high quality products. So you want the animals to be living nice lives just for the benefit of them living a good life, but also because the end product matters too. They're free to roam in those open pastures, fresh air, clean water, natural shelters. And it is something, the difference you can taste, and I'll touch a little bit on the taste near the end, but it does retain that natural tenderness. It is nutrient dense, which I'll talk about which nutrients, and the rich flavor, which I'll get into more. This is our dietitian pick this month, but also in the circular this week, which If you join me Monday, we'll deep dive a little bit more into the circular, but this is the graphic you'll see with it being our dietitian's pick. I believe the ground beef was on sale last week, but we're going to do some nice recipes with the sirloin this week. So these are some of the items you will see in our stores. Again, they're really, they call out to you when you're looking at them in the meat case. Mine, of course, they're in doors, and you can kind of see all of the items that they have together. And just that blue color is not something I feel like a lot of brands have, so it's very unique there. So this week, we're definitely calling out the Organic Meat Company beef sirloin steaks. They're going to be $7.99. And it is for a 12-ounce package, but you can see I cut mine in half. So this is half of the package. And they're so, again, I love the coloring. But $7.99, they freeze pretty well. And I made one of them the other day just to, cook it up myself and taste it. But $7.99 for those two steaks is quite a good deal, especially for an organic, grass-fed, and grass-finished beef. They have the 8515 ground beef, both in a 1 pound container or package. And then they have the 2.5 pounds. So if you want to buy a larger quantity, you'll see the tenderloin steak. So that definitely for the ounces is going to be a higher price point, but I compared a lot of beef. And there are very few that are the organic, grass-fed, and grass-finished. So the price point is very on point for a lot of these if you're looking for all of those attributes and the taste and everything that goes along with it. We do also have a strip steak and then a ribeye. So really kind of just depending on what cut you're looking for, we really do carry quite an assortment. Of course, prices availability may vary by date, your store location, and your shopping method. So whether you do Giant or Martin's Direct or you're shopping in our stores, I did link on the left-hand side, you'll see here, you can click on Giant or Martin's and it'll bring you to whatever your store carries at the time. And of course, this will be found in the meat case of your local Giant or Martin's. But let's look at each of these items. First, again, we have the 8515. So a nice 1 pound package. These also freeze quite nicely if you know you got a bunch that were on sale, and you can kind of store those. So very similar nutrition profile, kind of just baseline when you look at these compared to an 8515 of any type of ground beef, because it's telling you what the fat percentage is going to be. However, the taste and the quality will be noticeably different. The 4 ounce is going to be 240 calories. And this is before you cook it. Of course, you can always pour off some of the fat, but it is only 6 grams of saturated fat for that 4 ounce serving. Any product that grows in the ground or eats products out of the ground will have a little bit of sodium naturally, so 75 milligrams here, and then 21 grams of good quality protein. And then you'll see here a little bit of calcium. This isn't milk, so we're not going to get a ton of calcium from it, but then it is 15% of your daily value of iron. So that was one of the reasons I bought myself some last week, cooked up a couple. I like to donate blood, so I always like to make sure my iron levels are tip top, and beef is just one of those great products. We absorb a good amount of that. Then we're gonna have a tenderloin. I personally love a good tenderloin steak. So this is a 6 ounce steak. The recommendation, so the serving, it's for 2 servings. So some people, of course, will just eat one themselves. But just from a nutrition standpoint, 3 or 4 ounces is considered a serving. It is still going to be pretty, so this is fairly low in calories and in fat comparatively. Grass-fed, finished beef are going to be lower in fat, which I'll kind of get into. And especially something that ends in the words loin or round. So tenderloin tend to be a little bit leaner. Similar nutrition profile. So again, it's going to have a little bit of sodium, still 17 grams of quality protein. And this one has 10% of your daily value of iron. But again, it's a smaller portion. So then we have the beef strip steak. Sorry, I'm going to get my skillet heating up. Similar, so 4 ounces is the serving here because it is an 8 ounce steak. They are smaller portions, as you'll see, but the taste, the quality, you'll notice. 250 calories here. This one's a little bit higher on the fat. It is a strip steak. So 60 milligrams of sodium, 23 grams of protein. Again, there's nothing else in it, but it is just the beef. But Sometimes you're looking for a good strip steak. And of course, a good ribeye as well. However, this one for 4 ounces, it's only 9 total grams of fat, four of which are saturated, similar sodium, similar protein at 24 grams, and again has that quality source of iron. I don't know, just something about, I'm a sucker for good packaging and I just think it looks really nice too. So, it'll draw you to it when you see it in our meat cases. It'll have that beautiful, I guess it's like a blue-green color. And this is what I am using today. So this is going to be the sirloin steaks, kind of like petite little sirloin steaks. So perfect for serving whole. So that was how I cooked it the other day in my cast iron. I got a nice kind of crust on it. And then I like mine medium at best. So I cooked it kind of quickly. But they are just a perfect little size here. And not little, they're not, I mean, it is a good portion. It was more than I probably needed. A full one because this says the package of 12 ounces is supposed to have 3 servings, but certainly many people will probably eat the whole steak themselves. In terms of calories, pretty low still. Again, this is a grass-fed, grass-finished beef, 140 calories for that 4 ounce steak. And not something I'll probably get into a lot today, but this is the raw product. When you cook it, it does typically shrink a little, which you're still getting the nutrients that are here. You're still getting that 24 grams of protein, and then 15% of your daily value of iron. But it does come in a 2-pack, so you'll see 2 steaks in here. They cut really nicely if you only want to cook one at a time, which is really nice for a lot of us who live alone and you only maybe want to cook one steak and maybe freeze or have the other one for another day. They do cook up so quickly, so that's typically what I do is I'll just cook one and then cook the next one another day. So they cut real well. So let us get into our recipe for today because we're shaking up Feature Friday a little bit today. But I thought this was just a beautiful image. Again, beef, meat is just part of the diet. We want to make sure we're including some fruits, vegetables, whole grains, everything that we want in our meal. So today for our recipe, we are going to be making a Moroccan steak bowl. I'm excited for this recipe, although it does have a spice that is not my personal favorite, but I am going to give it a go. So for our Moroccan steak bowl here, as you can see, we will send the recipe as we always do. I'll talk through each of these ingredients, but we're going to make some couscous. This is kind of inspired by like a Moroccan tagine, which tagine is typically not served over couscous, but so that's why it's kind of inspired. So I already cooked up our couscous, but I will show you what I used. We're going to cook that 12 ounces of the Organic Meat Company sirloin steak, which we're going to cube. So I did already cut that up to show you. We're going to season that steak with a tablespoon of cumin, which is probably one of my least favorite spices, but if you love cumin, this is great. Certainly you could do other spices too. If I make this again, which is likely because I love all these ingredients, probably going to add some paprika. I think I might add it at the end. But then we're going to add a lot of ingredients that are similar to a tagine if you've ever made one or had one. We'll be doing some chickpeas, dates, and apricots. We're going to do some low sodium beef broth, some fresh parsley, and some almonds to go on top. I'm going to stop sharing for now. There's a little bit of like downtime while we're waiting for everything to heat through. So we'll return to our slides in a moment. Let me move everything over so we can see. And I'm going to turn on my other camera so you can join me in this. Let me see. Where's my other camera? Let's see. I'm not very tall, so it's hard to. There we go. Okay, let me spotlight. Where'd it go? I'm going to spotlight both of my videos. One moment. Okay, hopefully you should be able to see both videos now, so you'll be able to see my cooktop here. So in here, I just have a little bit of olive oil. I don't know where mine went. I just did a little spray of olive oil, just our like classic olive oil, not an extra virgin. I don't want it to burn or anything. So just like a classic olive oil. So I have that heating up. I can start to feel it. It's heating up. I will show you what I did to our beef. So again, this is the beef, half of the package anyway. So I did cut both of the steaks open. They're so cute. So I did some nice big chunks. I want to be able to see, and I don't want them to overcook either. You can very quickly overcook beef, especially a grass-fed finished beef. So they're nice big chunks. So hopefully they won't overcook there. I then tossed them in the tablespoon of cumin, which I just did, our giant brand cumin, tablespoon of that, and then just a little salt, pepper to taste. So I got all those cubes here. We are going to toss this. It doesn't say my pan is heated through, but I can feel it. It's getting hot. So I'm just going to toss them. Oh, I can hear it sizzle. So it's cooking. Okay. So it says to just cook these for a few minutes, about 2, I think it says. Again, I don't want to overcook them. I just want to get kind of a nice crust, so to speak, on them. So these are the sirloin steaks again that are $7.99 this week. I'm very excited. I love a good sirloin steak. And we're going to make another recipe on Monday. So we're going to talk about the circular Monday, but make sure if you want to cook these recipes with me, you pick up your sirloin this weekend or Monday morning. I love this cooktop. All right. While this is just kind of coming, heating through a little bit, I'll show you what I did as well. So I did already cook up my couscous. I love couscous, and I haven't really made it in a while. So I was excited to pick this recipe. There we go. Now the pan's heated through. So couscous is really fun, at least this version. So I'll just kind of show you. This is going to be like the teeny tiny little grains, as you'll see. They're so tiny. So couscous, at least this version, is made with like a semolina durum wheat, which is what we make pasta out of. So this is like teeny tiny little pasta grains. And what's nice, since they're so tiny, you boil a cup of water per cup of couscous. You let the water boil, you turn it off, you pour in the couscous, salt, butter, oil if you want to, and then you take it off the heat with the lid on, and it just fluffs up. That's really nice. So that's what I did before class. Oh my goodness. Can you see that? Look at that. That looks so good. All right. So again, I'm just going to get a little bit of color on at least one of the sides because I'm not a fan of overcooked beef. I don't want it to be too cooked. So actually, that's probably perfect. So then what we are going to add, basically everything else. I did already drain and rinse our chickpeas. So I'm just using our low sodium garbanzo beans, whatever name you want. So I'm going to throw those in there. I don't know if you can hear all the sizzling that's happening. Then we are going to add in the apricots and the dates. So I did already chop up our dates, but I will show you what I did. So they're stuck in there. This is a half a cup, I believe, of the chopped dates. It did not say to chop the apricots, so I did not. So it is a cup of apricots. These are, I'll get them in there. These are Turkish apricots, so they're a little bit darker than maybe some of the other apricots you might find. I found this in our produce department, and these are the dates, also in our produce department. Give it a stir. Break up all the dates. So then we are going to add in a cup of low sodium beef broth, which I already measured. Personally, I think we might need a little bit more beef broth, but I'm going to start with the cup because it's a lot quieter in here now. I like a little bit of juice to be able to pour over the couscous. So we will see how this cooks up. But I need to break apart those dates. Okay. So again, if you're familiar with like a tagine, it typically has dried fruit like apricots or dates, beans like chickpeas. So some are vegetarian, some typically have beef. So I think that is everything I wanted to add in there. So we have the chickpeas, apricots, dates, and beef broth. Okay, so it says to cook this for about 7 minutes. So I'm gonna add like a 5-minute timer because again, I don't want everything overcooked. So I'm going to leave that as is. I do want to show you very quickly before I turn the slides back on. So the recipe calls for pitted dates. These were not pitted. So I want to show you just in case you do buy non-pitted dates, what to do. So I just have a tiny cutting board here and my date, which they're not the prettiest food in the world, but I love dates. So you just kind of cut it in half and you'll notice it has a little pit. It kind of looks like part of a pecan almost, but that's it. You take the pit out and you throw it away. And then you chop it up however big or small you'd like. But you likely, depending on what you buy, you'll have a lot of dates left. I love to eat them. They're nice and sweet, almost like a caramelly sweetness. Stuff it with, almond butter or peanut butter, a little chocolate. So lots of good ways to use that up. So this is cooking. It's kind of simmering. We'll let it continue to simmer. In the meantime, I'm going to pull our slides back up to just chat through the rest of our information here. So again, in this pot, we have the beef that was seasoned with the cumin, a little salt and pepper, a 15-ounce can of those chickpeas that I rinsed and drained, half a cup of chopped pitted dates, cup of dried apricots, and then a cup of that low sodium beef broth. The tablespoon of olive oil was just to saute all of that. Once it cooks through, we're gonna, if you want to add more salt, pepper, you can chop up some fresh parsley and add that. We're going to divide it into bowls and then top with almonds. So just super nutrient dense recipe from the beef to the fruits that we have in here, the beans, almonds. I love it. All right, so let's keep going while the rest of that's cooking through. If I can find my mouse. Okay. So what are some of the differences that you will find between grass-fed and finished versus grain-finished beef? So grass-finished cattle, so the beef we're talking about today, typically spend their entire lives grazing and eating from pastures, so grasses. They can also eat some forage, hay, silage, different things like that, but grass is what they're eating. Grass-finished means they were eating grass from the time they were born until we turn them into a beef product. So grass all the way through. Grain finished, however, so that might be beef you're more familiar with. So most of these cattle did also spend most of their lives eating grass or foraging for other things. However, in the last portion of their life, they are then switched to, a diet that is prepared for them that might have grains, but also things like soy, local feed ingredients. It could be potato hulls, sugar beets. Here, around here, it could be potato chips and different things. So certainly it can include some grasses, but when they're grain finished, they're feeding on other things that they wouldn't necessarily naturally eat. Something like the Organic Meat Co., which you'll see here, these are going to be organic, grass-fed, and finished. So these products, again, they're eating grass their entire lives, and this means they're going to have typically less total fat per serving. They're going to be naturally higher in omega-3s, which they're never going to be, the omega-3s of a salmon or something, but compared to a grain finished, they're going to have more omega-3s. Beta carotene, so that's a precursor to vitamin A, vitamin E, and then other nutrients like conjugated linoleic acids, which some animal studies show this can be anti-cancer, can be beneficial for diabetes and heart disease. So more research is needed there, but these stakes will be higher in that. Iron, zinc, and B vitamins. So again, you're paying potentially a little more, but you are getting more nutrition for your dollar too. And then in terms of taste, like I know everyone has different preferences. So grass-fed and finished organic beef, as I mentioned before, tends to retain its natural tenderness and is nutrient dense, which means it can have that, richer flavor. Sometimes richer to them can mean more earthy. So thinking about they're eating a lot of grass their whole lives. So it could have a more earthy taste or a more mineral taste. So if they're higher in those iron and zinc that we need for health, you might taste that a little. Possibly like gamey taste. So gamey meaning it might taste a little bit more like you're familiar to elk or bison as opposed to a grain finished cattle. So again, this can be due to the fact they're grazing on a lot of wild plants. So just there might be some differences that you'll notice in taste. So some ways to enjoy these products. So I just called out a couple. So ground beef, of course, you know, ways to use ground beef. So things like burgers, tacos, meatballs, meatloaf, chilies and stews, stuffed peppers and cabbage rolls. The sirloin, like I'm using today. So of course you can grill and pan sear, make steak salads, which I love and probably will do with my leftover one. You can make Philly cheesesteaks, stir fry, fajitas, kebabs, rice bowls. So the ones with underlined are linked to a recipe on savory. Ooh, a steak quesadilla right now sounds very good. And then tenderloin, of course you don't want to overcook those, but we have a bunch of recipes and showing you how to use them. Ooh, okay. So let us see here. So if you go on to savory, you of course can find beef stroganoff recipes, ground beef. Oh, yogurt naan sounds delicious. So just ways to find more recipes for beef because the Organic Meat Co. did not have any recipes on their website. So make sure you tune to Giant or Martin's for your recipes. And you want to make sure you're picking up those sirloin to enjoy. So again, this is in our circular. This is our dietitian's pick straight from our carts, the $7.99 each for the 2 steaks here. Just, it looks so cute. All right, so wanting to learn more, make sure you tune in Monday. I'm going to be making more with the sirloin, 12 o'clock on Monday. Joni will be using their ground beef to make some chili for chili month, which you know is my favorite. And of course, you can, trying to think, tune in for that. November classes are posted. All right, so we see here, oh, it looks so good. Oh my goodness, okay. So the beef broth, a little bit absorbed, which is nice. There's still a little bit there. The apricots are gonna absorb some of that beef broth and flavors. This looks so good. So I will show you here. I did just plate, probably too much, but I plated some of the couscous, which I love. And then we are going to scoop out some. Oh, looks so beautiful. I'm going to, you're supposed to put the parsley and cook it in there, but I think I want the fresh parsley kind of right on top to kind of give it some green, but I'll throw some in there too. Calls for a 1/4 cup, but I love parsley and I cut way more than a 1/4 cup. So we're not gonna, oh, it smells so good. We're not gonna let it go to waste. So that's the parsley. We're gonna top with a little bit of almonds. So the recipe didn't specify what kind of almonds, so I did sliced. You certainly can do whatever kind you want. This is just like our sliced. And again, there's a million other ways you can use those sliced almonds so they won't go to waste. Look at that. It's so cute. It looks so delicious. I am very excited to give this a taste. It looks so good. The beef is not overcooked, which was my goal. But thank you so much for joining me today to learn more about the Organic Meat Company. I hope you're inspired to try some of their sirloin, especially this week, with it being such a good deal. And make sure you tune in Monday, where I'll be making a totally different recipe using their sirloin steak as well. I appreciate you joining me. Thank you and take care.